Welcome to the MINDXFRAME podcast, where we discuss all things mindset. My name is Tara, and in each episode, I sit down with experts in psychology and neuroscience, as well as individuals who have achieved the extraordinary in the world of business, sports, and beyond. My aim with each episode is to uncover insight into how our minds work and how our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes shape our experiences and performance. With that being said, let's get into today's episode.
My fear brought such an immense amount of focus in on what I was doing. Originally was using it in the wrong way because the fear was consuming me and stopping me from what I was doing because I was focused on what I was fearful of. But actually that element of fear brought so much focus in what I was doing. If I focused it in the right way, I have so much focus right now. Let's just switch it around. Fear can be really powerful and people try and avoid it, but actually it can be quite useful.
Today, I'm honored to be joined by Bryony Page. She is a two-time world champion in trampolining and a three-time Olympic gold medalist. She was the first British trampolinist to win an Olympic medal at the 2016 Olympics in Rio, where she won silver. 5 years later, she won bronze in Tokyo, and most recently, she won the Olympic gold medal at Paris 2024. Beyond her incredible athletic achievements, Bryony is an inspiring advocate for mental resilience, self-belief, and well-being. We explore how she cultivated her mindset to thrive at the highest levels and the lessons she's learned along her journey. Please welcome Bryony Page to the show.
Thank you. Hi to everyone, and what an amazing introduction. Thank you.
No worries. I guess first, what does it feel like to hear that introduction? And did you ever think that that was kind of the bio that someone would be reading for you?
No, definitely not. Like, I just started trampolining because I liked the look of it. It looked really exciting, and I one day hoped to become an Olympian. This was after several years of training and ups and downs. To become an Olympian was kind of what I thought was going to be my ultimate goal. And then the dream was to podium at a major championship. So to continue trampolining after Rio Olympics, having medaled there, like I really couldn't have imagined the next 8 years. So this really has been fantastic and very surreal it being read out, especially with the Paris Olympics being relatively recently.
It's incredible the accomplishments you've had and excited to dive in to your story of achieving those dreams. But would be great to start at the beginning and hear about when did you first get into trampolining, what drew you to the sport, and where did this whole journey kind of begin for you?
Yeah, so I started trampolining at my parents' local gym. It's called the Wingate Centre. It's a little tiny gym. Actually, it's a really good gym, but in the middle of nowhere. You wouldn't expect it to be there. Fantastic facilities. And I just started with gymnastics, and they had a trampoline squad alongside, and they had these trampolinists. I was really excited to see what they were doing, and it was the first time I really saw trampolining done to like an elite level. And I really wanted to try it out and have my whole gymnastics session on the trampoline instead of just the 5 minutes at the end. So I just basically started it because it looked like a lot of fun and it looked really exciting. And they had a trampoline squad, so they were competing at competitions, and I was really excited to kind of try out competing.
Amazing. So, for people who maybe aren't as familiar with trampoline gymnastics specifically, when you get on the trampoline, what is your goal? What are the things that you're being judged on, just to maybe give that context?
Yeah, of course. So our trampoline routine consists of 10 elements and they're consecutive. So you can start jumping and the routine doesn't judge until you do your first skill, and it's 10 jumps and you've got to try and fit in as much difficulty in those 10 jumps as possible. So my top level routine will start with 3 triple somersaults in a row and then finish with 7 more doubles with multiple twisting doubles. You want to show off execution. So basically you're going to get the judges deduct marks when you make mistakes, like if you lose form, so bending your knees when they're meant to be straight, or piking down when you're meant to be straight, or not quite making the shape that you need to make, or not finishing the twist in time. So there's lots of different things that the judges are looking out for, and you'll get deducted if you don't hit the code of points. We're also trying to jump as high as possible, so we actually get marked by a machine. They're like force plates underneath the trampoline that measure when you hit the trampoline. And it basically, it's called time of flight. So it's how long you're in the air for. So it will measure when you hit the trampoline. It won't take into account the depression of the webbing, but then as you lift into the air, it will time that. So
Mhm.
the better you are at trampolining, so technically and physically, the higher you'll be able to jump, and that's obviously gives you a higher score. You want to stay in the middle, so these pressure pads also can measure where on the trampoline you land, and you want to land in the middle. If you deviate from the cross, from the center of the trampoline, you'll lose marks. And yeah, fitting as much difficulty as possible. So you kind of want to find the balance between the difficulty, the horizontal displacement, which is how far away you are from the cross, the time of flight, and the execution.
Very
Simple.
cool. It's yeah, simple. It looks amazing, like, watching your routines and other Olympic gymnasts, seeing you kind of fly through the air and do a million different somersaults. It's really beautiful to watch and incredibly technical, I imagine, on your end, of course. So is there anything specifically that drew you to trampolining? You were a holistic gymnast, started that way. What drew you to the trampoline specifically?
It really was the skills and the height that people were getting to. With gymnastics, you're not restricted, but you don't get to fly as high. Not Simone Biles, but like we didn't get to go as high. Kind of, I do love all the disciplines and the apparatus in gymnastics. But the thing that drew me to trampolining was the fact that you could jump so high and have that feeling of weightlessness for longer and that freedom in the air, but also I wanted to learn the next skill and the next skill, and spinning faster, doing more twists, more complicated elements. I really loved learning those, and we have to link them as well. So I enjoyed that kind of feeling of transporting yourself through the air and in different places and trying to deal with it. And it's really quick paced. So I wanted to jump higher and I wanted to do harder skills so I could spin faster and enjoy that feeling of freedom in the air and flying through the
Yeah.
sky, like you said.
Yeah. Amazing, very cool. And curious, in those early days, what was that evolution from maybe doing trampolining more recreationally or after school to then that transition to, okay, this is something I can and should be taking very seriously? And when was that flip, I guess, of this is something I'm really passionate and serious about and could be a professional career?
Yeah, I don't know if I really saw it as a professional career until quite late on, but I think I took it quite seriously right from the start, but in a fun way. Like I love trampoline, I love the feel of it, and I just wanted to, I was always on the trampoline. If somebody had took too long to get on the trampoline, I'd be running on it and wanted to make sure that I could have my go. And I probably spent too long on the trampoline, and people kind of like, it's my turn, it's my turn. So I just love being on the trampoline and learning and challenging myself to the next thing. So I took it quite seriously right from the start, knew that I wanted to compete, and in my first competition I wanted to do well in and wanted to be the best that I could. And that's kind of been the same throughout my entire career, is just wanting to see how good I can get. And I'm still doing that. I still want to see if I can get better and better and do harder skills. And I take it seriously, but I have a lot of fun training. I absolutely love training and loved competing, then hated competing, then learned to love it again. So like but I've
Understood.
always really enjoyed that training side and trying to be better. So professionally, I didn't really see it as a career. It's just something that I made a decision. I wanted to go to university, and I made the decision which university I was going to go to based on, of course, the courses that I wanted to take and it being a good university for that. But also,
Mhm.
it had to be somewhere there was a trampoline squad that I got on well with the coach and I liked the atmosphere in the club. So that's kind of, I knew that I was taking trampolining seriously then, and that was the year that I first kind of made a major championship. So at junior level, I did a few friendly international competitions, but I didn't ever compete at major championships. So no European junior championships and no world age group championships. So my first major was a senior European championships, and in the same year the world championships, which is when I first started university. So took it seriously, wanted to do well at it right from the start, but I've always enjoyed it. So I still have fun and I still joke around and yeah, enjoy it.
I love that it started from that place of having fun and really enjoying it and having a passion
Mm.
for the sport. I think in a lot of sports these days, there's a lot of pressure to start really young. And I also get a lot of questions. Actually, a lot of listeners are parents who have children who are aspiring athletes and kind of going through that process. So was curious what that was like for you, and maybe if you have any advice for young athletes and or their parents who are kind of going through this time of, is being a professional athlete something that's possible?
Yeah, so I guess for me, like I tried to stay active in school as well. So I didn't stick to trampolining. I still had other things outside of that. So I wanted to learn how to play the flute, and I was part of the hockey club, netball. Like, actually tried out for the athletics county squad, but it clashed with trampolining, and I decided I wanted to do the trampolining classes over them. So, but I was never really told you have to restrict yourself to just trampolining. It was kind of my own choice that I decided that this is how many training sessions I would like to be able to do. And if something clashed with it, then I would make that decision whether I gave up a trampoline session to do something else or not. And my parents are really amazing. They never kind of put pressure on that. And they always supported, I guess, my freedom to decide which kind of route I wanted to go down. And also, they were really adamant to make sure that I was putting the effort in at school as well. You know, they wouldn't take me out of classes to make sure I could fit in a training session. They would just find a way around that, whether it would be doing more at the weekend or so. I guess my advice would be, yeah, to you don't have to start super young, and especially because I'm 34 now, so I've been traveling a long time, and that childhood and the younger years to forge your own path is, I think, is really important, because for me, it's allowed me to really enjoy my trampolining and other stuff outside of that. I'm so glad
Mm.
that I was able to play in a hockey team at school and compete like in matches each week over the summer, and it's like those sorts of memories. So I'm glad I was able to do that and didn't always have to sacrifice everything, just especially like during my childhood. And then and I never really saw it as sacrifice either. I think that's another thing to keep in mind as well. Like, it's the choices that you make. So I loved to go into training and see my friends there on a Friday night and Saturday morning, and then kind of going when you are old enough to go out in the evening and like lots of friends are going to parties or like going to the cinema or something, and I'd be like, no, I've got training on Friday, Saturday, let's do it on Saturday night instead, or I won't go out, or to make those sorts of choices. And I like being in the training environment. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, very cool. I think that's really interesting that you didn't see it as a sacrifice and it was a choice that you were making. I guess every choice you're sacrificing something, but for
Mhm.
you, that choice was what you're passionate about and most excited about. So framing it as a choice is really interesting and not a sacrifice. So, yeah, I really like that. And I also think it's really great how you talked about you kind of had a lot of other interests outside of trampolining as well. And I think it's something I'm hearing talked about more and more in terms of performance. Actually, came up interviewing Team GB's sports psychologist, Jess Tom, who I'm
Mhm.
not sure if you've worked with, but she talked about how it's important to have that like sense of self outside of your sport and having a holistic life outside of your sport so that your whole identity isn't tied to your performance and you recognize that you are valuable, I guess, despite your performance.
Yeah, I definitely think that. Like, I've tried so hard to have something outside of trampolining. For me, it's been really helpful. So especially like I wanted to go to university and experience that, and also like learn and get a degree. And actually, I hadn't really made it in trampolining yet. Like I said, I hadn't really done a major championships until after applying for university and going. So it wasn't seen as like a career path. I really had
Mm.
to have not even a backup. It was my route into life post education. I wanted to go to university and learn. And then yeah, so for me it was after that I really went out of my way to try and find things to do, because I was like 1 year as a full-time athlete going into Rio Olympics, and then it was like, wow, okay, so am I going to go back to study and do a master's or a PhD? Okay, no, I'm really enjoying being a full-time athlete now. Actually, it's given me a lot more time to be able to dedicate towards those kind of marginal gains and those big gains as well. So like sports psychology, nutrition, S&C, like just that little, and more recovery time as well as
Mm.
like a aging athlete, to have that recovery time, which I didn't really have during university, because every time outside of training, I was trying to study and trying to learn and revise for my exams, take my exams. So I found all this time, and so I just kind of went into my hobbies really. Tried to do some more arts and crafts. Tried to like spend more time with my friends and family. I guess as well around Tokyo Olympics. After that, I joined the Athletes Commission for Team GB, and I've been re-elected onto that for this next Olympic cycle as well. So I've really enjoyed my time there, and I hope to continue enjoy my time. So that's like kind of behind the scenes work for Team GB and takes up some of my time. I design leotards, so like I want to try and get involved in other things outside of trampolining, or at least my own little bubble of trampoline, whether that's the wider sporting landscape. And yeah, I think it's really important for people to have that, 'cause especially when I was at university, if I had a better training session, then I'd have university that I could kind of study and see my friends there. And then if university was, I was finding it really overwhelming and difficult, then my training session was like kind of my safe haven to be able to relax, and vice versa when it was exam time, using training to help it, and then when training was going bad, then university to kind of balance it out. So, and when things are going great, then it's really great. So
Yeah.
they both work hand in hand. But yeah, having something else and not my whole identity tied to trampolining has been really helpful. So it's been really nice actually going into like these Paris Olympics was so close to home. I had a lot of like I had friends from university to come and watch, and I had friends from different places and schools and things talking to me out that weren't able to come and see it, but they were watching it on TV. So it's nice having those little pockets of like different parts of me.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's very cool. I think, especially when you're young, if you're so focused on one thing only, you can burn out really easily. And it's really cool how you were able to kind of explore throughout that time. I think it's also really inspiring that kind of when you read someone's bio like yours, it's three-time Olympic champion, world's winner, and it seems like a very linear path that you knew you wanted trampoline young and then you just hit all of these goals. It's inspiring, I would say, to hear like you didn't have it all figured out from the
No.
get-go. And I think that's like reassuring for people who are still trying to navigate that path, and it's constantly making small choices and figuring out which way you are going. Yeah, so I just think it's interesting that externally it can seem like such a linear path, but for you experiencing it, it really wasn't.
It really isn't. And I think sometimes it's felt like it's been one step forward and two steps back rather than the other way around. Like it really hasn't felt easy to continue and progress, because especially in a sport like trampolining, which is like an aerial sport, so you can get it in obviously gymnastics and diving and freestyle skiing and snowboarding, like that feeling of you need to know where you are in space and time and what your body's doing. And for me, I kind of my first biggest challenge in trampolining was that I went through a mental block and wasn't able to do the skills that I could do like literally the day before. So like it was I almost lost all my skills, wasn't able, I wouldn't take off for things, and just the confidence levels were so low, and like not knowing where I was, and knowing what my body was going to do in the air, like it's a really confusing time. So that was my biggest challenge, and that took so long to get over, like years, and to get all of the skills back took a really, really long time. And you just, when you kind of did get them back, you then lose some and then get them back in. So it really wasn't a linear pattern. And then being able to compete again, and kind of going through times of like not competing very well, and you think, is this ever going to happen? Like I'm training well, but I'm not competing well. And it just felt like over and over again was kind of making mistakes and failing, and just I didn't make it to I actually trialed for Beijing Olympics, so I wasn't expecting to go at all. Like it was just for experience and just kind of see how the other top athletes would trial and how it worked. But I was hoping to make the 2012 Olympics, but my trial event went, like my first few trials just went so badly. So for me, that was like a missed opportunity. So it hasn't, yeah, definitely hasn't felt like an easy path, and it took me a long time to be able to kind of overcome challenges and get there. And even after Rio, I had injuries, or I had an injury building up to Rio, which I then decided to have surgery to fix it. The first surgery didn't go well. I go for a second one. So there's 2 years on and off of being able to train, not being able to train. And then, of course, the global pandemic and then the postponement. So like it really isn't a linear pattern. And it's just kind of how to deal with challenges that are faced. And for me, I felt like I always wanted to find that joy in trampolining again. So when you come through a challenge, it's really difficult, and you don't really, it's when it's too challenging, it's not enjoyable at all, especially if you're not
Mhm.
able to take off with the skills and not even feel what you want to feel. So it's like a runner not being able to run, if you're injured, not able to do the thing that you love to do. So what gets you through that is that a mental resilience and trying to find ways to make the boring interesting, to find ways
Mhm.
to overcome the challenges and make that time worthwhile. And for me, it was always just, I didn't want to give up on a bad day. It's like the Nastia Lukin and her mum have come up with this quote, or they came up with this quote that I've heard, which was, "You can't give up on a bad day." And I just thought that really resonated with me. And I wanted to get through a challenge and then make a decision whether I would be able to stop or not, because it was a good day and it meant that I'd finished because I didn't love it anymore, not because it was too hard to overcome.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard that quote. So you shouldn't give up on a bad day. You have to wait for a good day to kind of see clearly and make a decision of if you want to
Mhm.
continue or not.
Yeah, and I think if you give up when it's really challenging, it's either you've lost that self belief, but luckily the people around me, when I didn't believe in myself, they believed in me, so they were able to help me out during those times. But a lot of the time, like if I didn't, I must have believed it, that I could get through it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have tried. But at the same time, you start doubting if you're ever gonna surpass this challenge. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess for me, I just didn't want that feeling of regret. I didn't want to be that person that said, "Oh, if only I'd done this and I have made it here." I wanted, I didn't want to go look back and go, "What if? What if I did this? What if I tried here? What if I kept going? What could I have achieved?" And I just didn't want to have that regret or that feeling that I could have done more. So that's kind of what stubbornness got me through some most of it, as well as that desire to feel good on the trampoline again.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I definitely want to dive into some of those things you mentioned of those obstacles you had to overcome. So, starting maybe with the Rio Olympics, you were preparing for the Rio Olympics. You mentioned it briefly, but it's called lost moves syndrome that you
Mhm.
experienced. On the Olympics website, they did a promo of you and how you overcame that loss of spatial awareness. It really, like, brought tears to my eyes watching that and how you
Oh.
overcame it. It was so inspiring, and so I really wanted to ask you about that. I guess, what was that lost move syndrome experience like for you? And then it sounds like you really had to start from the beginning of redeveloping your skills. So what was that experience like? And then how did you think about approaching it?
Yeah, this is a really challenging thing to overcome because it's like your own brain stopping you from doing something or doing something weird. So it's difficult to kind of work out. It's not like there's a clear solution. It's not like an
Yeah.
injury requires time, physical therapy, and exercise and good nutrition. It's like how do we navigate this? And it appears in people in different ways. But for me, just I kind of got lost in the air, didn't know where I was, and then kind of that triggered this fear in my abilities on the trampoline and what could happen and what could go wrong.
Mhm.
And then I was just basically I would take off for a skill and bail out. So instead of finishing the skill, I just land on my back, and then that scared me more. And then eventually I just wouldn't take off for skills. And I wanted to take off for skills, but something in my brain was stopping me from
Mhm.
doing that. And that then became a fear of mine that I would suddenly stop because I didn't feel like I had control over that. So it was a fear of the skill, fear of myself, and then this fear of not taking off for something and how it made me feel.
Just to make sure I understand, so is it that the connection between the brain and your body is kind of disconnected? And I imagine as a trampolinist, you're very aware of where you are in space at all times, especially doing these
Mhm,
tricks where
mhm,
if you don't land on your feet, it could be highly detrimental. So
mhm.
that, like, high awareness of where you are, just it can suddenly there can be a disconnect.
Yeah, so I think like if I was to take off for a skill and it go wrong, it was my body trying to save myself before I could think
Mhm,
about to doing the skill. So like my body would do something that subconsciously to try and save it from like landing. So like landing on my back is safer than trying to do the twist and getting lost, for example. But I didn't
mhm,
know it was happening. My body just did it because part of my brain told it to. It's just,
mhm.
but I don't
It's
have
like a
control over
fight or
that part of the
flight
brain.
response or
It was
something.
like
Yeah,
really strange, like a
yeah.
reflex, and I couldn't control it. And then the other one was in my head, I'd be thinking of the skill right, but then I wouldn't take off because, again, part of my brain that I couldn't control was stopping my body. So it was almost a shock when it happened, even though like I was worried about it happening and think this could happen. But I'm like, let's do the skill, let's do the skill, let's do the skill, focus on that. And then all of a sudden, my body would just stop the trampoline all of a sudden. So like literally from full height to nothing,
Oh,
and your heart rate goes up. And the feeling was like I felt embarrassed by that when it happened. I felt like just such a failure that I couldn't do the skills that I wanted to do, and it's so confusing because the thing was as well that people that had gone through this and that I knew before hadn't come out the other side, so they'd given up, and so that
well,
normally it means like that's the end of your career. And for me, it was like I just can't imagine that. Like I had to find a way to get through it, and but it's just horrible to go through because you don't have control over your body. You don't feel like you have control over your mind. It's confusing. It's upsetting. You can't do this. Like I couldn't trampoline the way that I wanted to, and that's why I do it. Like I love the feeling of flying through the sky, and I could, and for some reason, my brain and my body weren't allowing me to do that. And it's not like it wasn't clear on how to fix it. So it
mm,
kind of feels like I felt like a little bit like I was grieving the loss of something that I loved. It really just felt so depressing and difficult and uncomfortable. And I guess to overcome it, it was such a slow process. So it came about with one skill. I managed to fix that skill, and then it lost a different one, and then I got that one, and then it just filtered through all my skills to the point where I couldn't do like a single somersault with a twist at the end, like a Bryony, which is one of the I've been able to do that before I even started trampolining. I could do it as gymnast, so
well,
it felt so strange to not be able to do something so simple. And it's just to overcome it, just had to literally restart everything and relearn it all. And like because as a kid I just learned the skills and I just did them. I didn't really think fully about how I did them and how it works. I just did them and I felt them, and I saw what I was doing and learned the next skill and the next skill. Whereas this time I wanted to be absolutely certain of, okay, to take off I do this, to when I take off I can see this, and if I don't see this I do this. And I
mm,
really wanted to like I had to relearn everything to make sure that I was confident in what I was doing for everything that I was doing right from the start. So yeah, just relearned it all and built my confidence slowly. And then you kind of build it all back, and then all of a sudden lose it all again, and you don't know
yeah,
why. You're like, I have to go through it all over again. So then you then learn what works, what doesn't work, how to take off for
mm,
something. And because sometimes it's training the body, sometimes it's training the mind and
right.
tricking the mind into doing things and understanding why it's doing it. So I worked with a confidence coach. My actual trampoline coach was really, really patient with me. And then new trampoline coaches, they also helped me through it because it's something that crops up every now and then. That is just
Mhm.
something that I've gone through it so many times that you kind of learn how to deal with those fears. And when you feel like I have like a nemesis skill that physically I can do, but sometimes I just can't see it I can't visualize it, and you just have to take off and let the body muscle memory take over. But that's
Mm,
kind of scary. So
yeah.
um, but knowing the trusting that process in and being able to do that, and I've gone through it so many times that I can do that now. But yeah, so took little tiny baby steps, and to the point of like if I did something in the start of the session, I tried to stay like take it right from the start. So no past. So like this session, what can I get out of it? It didn't matter if the day before I could do, a double front or a double back. This session, I can just start from the beginning and see what I can get to. That's something. And I don't have to look about, oh, I didn't do as much as I did yesterday or last week. It's like, what can I do today? And if I could do something, it would like smiley face, trying to only focus on the positives.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it's such a weird thing to go through. It really doesn't make too much sense. It's not one size fits all, so it's difficult
yeah.
to kind of help someone through it because everyone's different.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing to hear how so many people can encounter that and give up. So it's amazing that you really found this way of working through it of one, not wanting to give up on a bad day and only waiting for a good day to make that kind of decision. And two, really, I think really focusing on the positive is something that's really hard to do, especially as a high performer, someone who always wants to improve. It's so easy to focus on the negative and the areas of improvement. So I think it's really great how you found a way to even if it was so small for you, focus on that positive every day.
Yeah, I think when you're kind of not able to do anything that you used to be able to do on the trampoline, that something small seems like the biggest deal, and something like achieving that first Bryony, so front somersault with a half twist, achieving that first thing was a huge deal
Mm.
because it took I couldn't do anything, so to do one thing was a massive deal, and it was a starting block. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if it was an easy skill or a hard skill to take off, when because I was fearful of not like that feeling of not taking off and the body doing something different. So if I was to succeed in doing something that I wanted to do, it didn't matter if it was big or small, that I worked out what it was that allowed me to do that skill, and it's
Mm.
then I can use that for other skills and other skills. So like I had, I think it was like 2 weeks before 2008 British Championships where I wasn't taking off for any of my skills, and then all of a sudden I was able to do that Barani or a half out at the end of a double. So I was able to finish a skill, and that meant I could then do a tucked half out. So this is a double front with a half twist, a tucked half out, a piked half out, a half in, half out, tucked and piked. I could do double backs because they didn't have a twist in. So I was able to actually construct a routine and triples. So something that I forced myself into was doing a two triple routine because I kind of had to, because I didn't have any other skills, because it was so even though a triple is quite a difficult skill, the
Mm.
actual elements of it is simple because it's only a half twist at the end. So once I got
Nice.
that half twist, I could do it all, and then after the competition, I couldn't do anything again. But building up to that, I was able to construct a routine and compete, and then had to rebuild again to get the harder skills in as well. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's really interesting. It's really
Interesting.
strange why it works. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And you mentioned you worked with a confidence coach.
Mhm.
What is that, I guess, and what was the main thing that you learned from that person?
Yeah, good question. So I kind of see him as like a psychologist in a way. So the thing that my trampoline coach had thought for me, it was my confidence in my own ability was just completely gone. I just had no confidence in myself. I had no trust in what I could do. So for him, he thought, well, why don't we try a confidence coach that specializes in this, a psychologist specializes in this thing, because this might be able to kind of overcome some barriers that your brain's putting in place. And so he helped me to understand like certain reasons why I was not confident in myself, and then also found ways to be able to deal with that. So like the emotional element of not being able to do a skill and suddenly like not taking off or something, every time that happened, it crushed my confidence. So he's like helping me find ways to deal with that and take the emotion out, take the anxiety away from trying skills and knowing that knowing I was going to fail, taking that anxiety away to allow um, a bigger chance of actually succeeding. So yeah, it was somebody to talk to that understood a little bit more about what I was going through, and somebody that knew the neurobiology, the actual
Mhm.
why something might be happening, and certain techniques that physiologically could change that anxiety as well as just mentally and emotionally. So that was like the starting blocks to be able to then do the skills, because like my trampoline coach knew that I could do it, and I knew I could do it because I could do it a week ago or however long ago. Like my body, I could do it before. So what's stopping me from doing it again? It's in the mind, and this
Yeah.
confidence coach could kind of unlock that. I always thought like this lost move syndrome is this kind of phantom that kind of infects you, but actually
Mm.
like it's part of your brain that is trying to protect you from things going wrong and hurting yourself. And it's not helpful in this sense,
Mm.
but to understand that, you could then be a little bit kinder to yourself, and find a way to actually have a little bit more control over that. So
Mm.
it's if it was my brain that was telling me to stop and not take off for a skill, my brain can also tell it to shut up and, and let me do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's fascinating because you experienced this in kind of a really extreme scenario in trampoline gymnastics. But I think it's something we all experience of our brain can be trying to protect us in ways that aren't actually that helpful. Even things like
Mhm,
anxiety, constantly worrying, or feelings of imposter syndrome, like it's your
mhm,
brain trying to help you, but it's just misdirected.
mhm,
So I think this is a really cool example of how you can retrain your mind, and it's a physiological thing, like, it's not your fault, and you should have compassion towards that, but what are the tools to, I guess, start to reshift that mindset or mechanism? So I
Mhm.
think it's really cool that you were able to do that in such an extreme example of that
Yeah,
phenomenon.
well, thank you. It did take me several years to overcome it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like, yeah, it can apply to anything. Like if there's a deadline coming up for whatever homework, work, whatever, and like the amount of anxiety that can bring somebody. And imagine if you didn't have that, if you just got on with the job and it's your own brain like, oh no, I need to do it in this way and this way. Another thing, well, as well, though, is like some people respond to stress in different ways, and actually, stress could be really helpful, or it can be really so super hindrance, and you end up procrastinating. But what I found as well was that like my fear brought such an immense amount of focus in on what I was doing. I
Mm,
just originally was using it in the wrong way because the fear was consuming me and stopping me from what I was doing because I was focused on what I was fearful of. But actually, that element of fear brought so much focus in what I was doing. If I focused it in the right way, it would be really helpful. So, and you can kind of apply that to that anxiety and that stress. If you're feeling, I don't know, worried about a deadline, and it brings that physiological response, it's like, right, well, actually, I've got so much focus now. Let's focus in on what to do. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's kind of what I felt was, yeah, if I'm worried about something, or before going into a competition environment, if I'm just before the trampoline getting on, and I'm scared or worried I'm going to mess up, I'm like, actually, like, I have so much focus right now. Let's just focus in on the technical side
mm.
and just switch it around. It's amazing how much fear can actually be useful in some ways.
Wow, very cool. I haven't heard that before. I really like that. How do you leverage your fear as focus,
Mhm.
basically?
Yeah,
Very
fear
cool.
brings focus. It's just finding the way to focus it on the things that are going to help you. But fear can be really powerful, and people try and avoid it, but actually, it can be quite useful.
Wow, very cool. I love that. I'm gonna remember that for sure. Um, and so I'm curious, so you're going through this lost move syndrome. You have the Rio Olympics coming up. And so what is going through your mind at the Rio Olympics? You've just had this experience of brain and body fighting against you. How are you managing all of those feelings? You also had this ankle injury, so another physical limitation. How
Mhm.
are you thinking about all of that going into Rio for you?
Yeah, well, luckily for me, the so because the first time that this lost move syndrome kind of, or this lack of confidence, mental blocks started appearing was like 2007, 2008. I'd had a lot of years experience, and actually every now and then it crops up a little bit, but it was definitely more copable and able to overcome it really quickly. So if something cropped up, it was like boom, like I can feel this. I can feel this uncomfortableness coming up, and I'd tell my coach, and I'd be like, okay, we need to just take a step back, do a few more of these skills in isolation, and I found ways to work it through. So actually, I felt really, really confident going into the Rio Olympics that I wasn't really thinking about the lost move stuff.
Mhm.
Going into Rio Olympics, like I'd felt really the best I'd felt psychologically and physically going into, minus the injury, but in terms of
Yeah.
technically and physical strength, I felt like the strongest I'd ever been going in. And that, I guess I had a lot of mental preparation going into that competition. I had a really tough build up for that year. Like the year before those Olympics, I was in a boot because I had a bony stress response in my left leg, and I had like 6 weeks in a boot plus the
Wow.
rehab. So it's probably like 3 months before I was doing routines again. And I had like 2 weeks to prepare for the British champs, and that was a
Wow.
qualifier for the world champs. The world champs was a qualifier for the Olympics. So I had a
Oh,
really stressful
wow.
time.
Okay.
Um, so that was like, right, you need to be focused on this. And I managed to qualify a space alongside Kat for the country at the World Championships. We needed two in the final. We managed to get myself and Kat in the final, so we knew we had two spaces. But really, there were like three of us, if not four, going for two spaces at the women. So it was a really intense time in that next, from like January on. So the World Champs are in November each year generally. And then so from January onwards, and the team was going to be selected like 6 weeks out from the Olympics. So during that time, you're kind of competing and pushing yourself, and so that was really tough. I didn't have the the nicest start out the that year, like personal stuff with like a few funerals that I attended and loss and grievances. So like
Mm.
that was really tough outside of trampolining as well as inside trampolining. I was pushing myself to my absolute limits, but didn't really succeed in competitions, and I didn't really understand what was going on. So it was, for me, it was like I guess my lowest point was the European Championships, where I didn't compete well individually, but in the team final I got the best score, but that didn't count towards my Olympic qualifying. So like I knew I had it in me, but I just wasn't doing it at the right times, and it was just a really tough competition. I just felt so low. I didn't feel like I was going to make the team. I didn't feel like I was making any progress, and pushing myself through so much emotional strain. And like at the European Championships, my uncle passed away, so we were actually going to see him. Like I held off going to see him. I was going to see him the week after, but didn't get to do that. So like the guilt and that sadness,
Yeah.
and so like I just felt so low. I was like, whoa, I just don't know if I can do this. Like I don't know if we're a few months out from the games, but I'm so miserable. Like I'm not able to
Wow.
get through this. And so that was like the biggest thing for me in the build up to the games, rather than the last move, was like
Mm.
that. Just like I don't know, like that self doubt and giving everything to something and it not working how I wanted it to. And I think the thing that changed was I was like, oh, this like, is this going to be worth it? And it was actually like, well, I want to try. How am I going to make it worthwhile? And I've got
Mm.
however many months left. How can I make these the best few months? How can I learn from the past and the mistakes, and see them not as a failure but something to grow from? And how can I live the next few months and each day try and find a little bit of success in each day? And so I basically just kind of reset my mind a little bit. Instead of just on the outcome goal, I just tried to live my life by my values and be proud of that. And
Mm.
I think that's what kind of gave me my strength going into the Olympics when I did get selected. It was the most amazing moment, but I
Yeah.
didn't need, for me, I didn't feel like I needed the Olympics to become the person that I wanted to be.
Mm.
My ultimate goal was to be able to feel the best routine I could. And I didn't have to do that at a competition. I just wanted to feel and just see how good I could be on the trampoline. I obviously wanted to go to the Olympics and was training towards that. So I was really happy to make it. And I really wanted to feel that best routine I could in the competition. That became the aim. But really I felt the strongest going into that competition because I was so proud of the effort that I put in.
Mm.
I literally couldn't have given any more.
Yeah.
Like every tiny decision was, is this going to better me as a person and an athlete? And is it
Mm.
going to get closer to this goal? And I was um, like had blinders on and was really, really focused in and just onto my values, not just trampolining, like my top values, friends and family actually. So making sure I was
Yeah.
able to spend time with them, especially what had happened in that year, to make sure I could find that time and value it. And self growth. So I was trying to learn from stuff. And actually, achievements was outside my top three values. So it felt nice to just, and happiness. I wanted to find
Yeah.
ways, things, do things that brought me joy, and find trampolining joyful again, and not put so much kind of stress on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just felt like even if I crashed in the Olympics, I knew that that was the best I could have done because I'd
Mm.
given everything I possibly could. And that's kind of what gave me that sound line going in,
Yeah.
knowing that I was going to be proud no matter what.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that framework of defining your values. And it sounds like that experience, your uncle passing away and going through that really allowed yourself to reevaluate what are my values and put like friends and family at the top.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that you're not striving to be an Olympic athlete, but you have your values. And there's so many decisions we make every day that it's so easy to not prioritize friends and family, for example, when you're like so focused on work or chasing an external goal. So I think that's really cool how you really filtered all your decisions through that framework to kind of, I guess, redefine what success was for you. It wasn't just this
Exactly.
Olympic medal.
It really was that. Like if I after the games, I did like presentations for schools, and that's literally
Mhm.
one of the things it's like redefining success and what it means to you, because I used to see it as going to the Olympic Games, that would be success to me. But actually, like I found success in every single day if I followed my values and that plan and that idea of giving 100% to the areas that I could do that with.
Yeah.
which was for me trying to do it in every single area of my life.
Yeah.
But like, it's just being able to be true to who you are and achieve those things and do it in the right way. So I tried to come up with this list of 10 super values and made sure that somehow they would fit into my weekly plan.
Mm.
Um, and then just the little things outside of those that it's just who you are. So I wanted to be encouraging and supportive with my teammates, even though they were my competitors. And,
Mm.
like I wanted to be that person. I wanted to go into a room and be able to lift up the energy rather than drag it down, which I felt like I had been. And I can even check on myself when I've like left a training session, it's not gone well. I've gone, actually, do you know what? I've changed the tone of the room there. I should have. I'm hard on myself, and I'd be like making sure that the next time I'd like reevaluate and try and be that person that lifts up people and not
Mm.
just complains or is upset about how my training's going. Actually, see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
and be that person I want to be. It's hard to in certain moments, but if I check at the end of the day and try again harder the next day, that's kind of
Yeah.
how I see it.
Is that something you remind yourself of daily? Do you have like a morning routine or an evening routine, or it's kind of something you just keep in your mind?
I used to have it. So like, I kept a journal, or at least like wrote in a diary, and at the end of each day would be like a gratitude thing, and almost like a not a mark out of 10, but things like, oh, what could I have not done better, but what are things that I liked about this day, or what are things that I might have changed, and just a kind of reevaluation. But my life is so chaotic at the moment.
I'm sure.
So yeah, I really would like to get back into that routine. I
Yeah.
found it so helpful, and yeah, but I guess I naturally think about that at the end of the day anyway. So even if I don't write it down,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that, if it's just on the car journey back from training, or whether it's whilst eating dinner and having a chat with, my boyfriend, or just, stroking Sushi, my cat, and just having a think about the day.
Yeah.
There's something in there that's just, I guess, analyzing it and paying attention to things like that. Yeah, I want to support and be better and better myself as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that, and it's probably programmed into you now because you've thought about it so much. I think for me, it's helpful because often we don't we reflect maybe at the beginning of the new year, and then you don't until the next year. So I think identifying what you said, like those super values, and for me, writing them down or having them somewhere in my room is really helpful, just so I like don't
Mhm.
forget them or stray from them. But I really like how you've integrated that into your day to day. But wanted to touch on after Rio, you're then training. Tokyo is coming up next, and then Paris, of course, the following 4 years later. And that's a long time to maybe having less attention on you. Obviously, it's a huge spotlight during the Olympics, and all eyes are on the athletes. But in those 4 years, that's, I would guess, the more unglamorous work that you're putting in the hard work and dedication. Waking up early every morning, I imagine, on cold mornings in
Mhm.
the UK. So, what do you find keeps you consistently working towards those goals day in, day out during those times as well?
I quite like routine, so I think just sticking to a routine, I just enjoy that anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess that's an element of discipline. Generally, I'm motivated. I think the difficulties was after Rio was the injuries, or the
Mhm.
injury that the surgeries didn't quite go to plan. So, or the first one didn't quite fix the issue and actually made it worse in the end. So, and then the second one, um, my I it was in like my foot ankle was in a cast. So it's an ankle surgery, and my ankle was a cast. And when it's taking out of the cast day, um, I was like, oh, I can't feel my foot.
Oh,
And
no.
I know, and then because like I knew I was uncomfortable, I felt like the cast wasn't quite fitting, and I felt like my foot was like, I don't know, just like not quite feeling right, and I was in a
Mhm.
lot of pain. And like, the pain medication wasn't really doing anything. I was just like, oh, okay, well, like it just was. I just still feeling the same amount of pain. But so when I said that, the physio and the doctor just kind of looked at each other and was like, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Just like,
Like, oh no.
okay, what do we do from here? This isn't right. So,
Yeah.
because what happened was just there was like nerve damage during the
Oh wow.
surgery, and for me, like when you sit cross-legged, or and you kind of lose that feeling in your
Yeah.
foot, and that moment where it feels really big, and like just
Mm,
before it goes pins and needles. So if you touch it, it hurts.
mm,
It was
mhm,
basically like that. Like I couldn't tell where my foot was gonna hit the floor, and when it did, it would be really painful, like a shooting pain up my leg, and I couldn't lift my leg up to do the pike folds or splits. Like, so I was like, whoa, this is gonna, and the pain meds weren't working because it was nerves, not anything
mm,
else. So yeah, so that was an interesting time, and the thing that kind of, that's a huge like thing to go, I can't even walk on something that is not an injury, and it's not like, it's not something that we expected from this surgery. If I can't walk without pain, how am I going to jump on a trampoline that's like digging into my foot with a webbing,
mm.
when
Yeah.
just standing on the floor is painful, or prodding it is painful? So it was kind of really stick with it, because it's that same feeling of, if I don't, then I'm going to regret it, and I want to know how far I can get. And obviously, trying is going to be better than not trying. So, and I've got to give myself the best chance possible to overcome this and do the right things, and hope, just have a little bit of belief in my body and myself, and the program, and have amazing sports experts around me, as well as health experts that were helping me. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's tough. So actually, when I was given the year extra, because of the pandemic, when we were
Yeah.
like, it was postponed a year, for
For
me, I was like,
sure.
I get one of my years back.
Yeah.
Although like during the pandemic, we're not allowed to train on a trampoline, but actually physically I could
Mm,
improve what I was doing. And so like, I guess it was, for me, like it's a mixture to keep going every day and give it all my all. It's like, sometimes I can't do that. Sometimes I can't just give everything every day. Sometimes you have to let yourself have a rest, but, and just accept that, and forgive yourself for it, and be kind. But
yeah.
the majority of the time, the thing that keeps me going is, um it is really aligning to my values, and
Yeah.
self-growth, hard work, just giving everything, and wanting to feel that each day, that level of success at the end, and also enjoy it, like
Yeah.
finding ways to make, so over the lockdowns where we weren't allowed to train, you had to stay at the house and weren't allowed to do what you normally do, and it was like, how can, this is going to be either really boring, or I can try and make it enjoyable and make it fun and interesting and be
Mm,
creative, which is another one of my values, of being creative and trying to find a
mm.
solution. So it was, I guess it's just, I want to be a certain person. I want to be closer to that person every day, and just trying to do that. And I'm pretty stubborn. Like I'm stubborn, and I'm competitive. So
Yeah.
like I want to be the best at being better.
Yeah.
Just try.
I
So
love
like, yeah, I just super competitive and stubborn, and that's kind of, and I like routine. So they kind of all go hand in hand for those,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially over lockdowns, when you kind of left on your own devices, and can go one of two ways. I think is kind of tough.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I really like the finding creative ways to solve things or making really
Mm.
mundane things fun
Yeah.
in creative ways. And I have to ask you about the Paris Olympics, which we haven't got into yet, but what was that experience like for you? What did you feel going into Paris? And of course, what was it like when you won the gold medal?
Yeah, so it's so nice to reflect, because actually going into Paris, I, especially like the few weeks before, my confidence and my training was not, like, my confidence was low, and my
Mm,
training wasn't going how I wanted it to at all. And I had a, I don't know how it really came about, but I had an ankle issue after the World Championships when I came back into training. Like, it was just really sore. I didn't really know what happened. I knew I was going into the World Championships with a bad ankle, but I was managing it well. I think just overdid it at the competition and my holiday afterwards, like with walking, and I just think it was aggravated, and just really just trying to catch up on that and improve that, but also wanting to train my hardest routine. And it, like, they don't really go hand in hand, because to do the hard routine I needed high volume, and because it wasn't going well I needed to do more of it. So it was like trying to manage the volume of my training, and it just got to a point where it's like, this isn't working. Like, I've got to let it go. I've got to play tactics and go for the what I think can score the best routine with what I have now. And unfortunately, like it didn't have. So the routine that I wanted to compete at the Olympics with my dream was the 3 triple routine, which I competed at World Championships and won with. But my actually highest scoring routine was the 15-2, which I did in the prelims, and that's what I chose to do for the Olympics. But it was really disappointing to have to change that plan and not do the hard routine that I really wanted. It gave me my best chance at scoring well because I essentially had like a hallmark buffer to go wrong before the others kind of caught up with that tariff. And also, in case somebody else did a high difficulty routine, I was at least on par with them. But the 15-2 and the 15 difficulty was the highest of the competition, or joint highest. So it just meant I had to absolutely nail it. So yeah, so I wasn't going in with like loads of confidence. After the World Championships, I really hoped that like my goal was to become Olympic champion and win the gold. But going in, I really wasn't expecting that, and I was kind of changed the goals to seem less daunting based on how my training was going. So I hoped for a medal, and I thought if I don't make finals, like something has gone horribly wrong here. But yeah, I guess like I had the same goals going into each Olympics, which was trying to do the best routine I could on the day, enjoy it, and learn from it. So I think if we kind of, I really did enjoy the Paralympics and actually competing. I remember like, and I have it on camera as well. It's like there's proof of it. I was smiling before getting on the trampoline, like for a competition, which that part of the competition, I want to be super focused on the routine. And normally I'm really nervous and like fear of what could go wrong and just really focused. So, because the fear brings the focus. But this time it was like, I just absolutely loved the crowd cheering. And I was straight after the French competitor. So the crowd cheering was like, not for me, it was for her. But I took it as my own. I loved it. I was just so, like, so loud. I was like, just, yeah. So I was smiling just for the fact that I was at another Olympic Games, that the crowd was cheering, and that I was getting onto a trampoline and was going to be able to give it my best shot. And I'm so happy that I knew I enjoyed it before I even did well, if that makes sense. So I love that. And yeah, the whole experience, my family were there to watch. So my mum and dad, my brothers, their partners, and my brother has 2 kids, 1 and 3 at the time of the competition. So it's like a big commitment for a whole family, like a young family, to go and watch. So I was like so happy that my family could come and watch it, especially after Tokyo. And my boyfriend was there too, and I had some friends. So it was, yeah, it's really nice to have that moment, and that no matter how the competition went, I was really happy that I had that. And then for the competition to kind of play out, so I didn't really do the best routines in prelims, but I was I like to say I was saving myself for the final. And like I actually think I was. So I knew I had to deliver a routine that was good enough to make final, but I also knew that the competition is a longer competition than normal. It's quite draining. And I knew I needed to save energy for the final to give my final, which is the medal performance, the best shot I could. And so I remember before the final competition just being ultra focused in on what I was doing. And I wasn't watching the other competitors, although I was really aware of the scores, and I was really aware of like how people reacted to them. So I kind of knew who was leading and how they felt. And even though I hadn't seen the routines, I kind of knew that there was a medal up for grabs, basically, if I just did a normal routine. And I was like, well, I'm not here to do a normal routine. I want to do the best routine I can. And I remember kind of remembering like not to settle and try and get the best out of me. So that's what I tried to do, but not go like massively overboard and risking everything. So yeah, and when I saw the scores after my final routine and saw that there was one more person to go, but I was on top of on top of the scoreboard, meant that I was going to get another medal. And I was like, wow, 3 Olympics, 3 medals. And my family are here to see it. My personal coach was there by my side as well as the national coach. And it was just such an exciting moment, like especially with the build up, because I'd been stressed out from January, like with my ankle, and it's not going well. And I was like, I really was just so shocked and surprised and over the moon that it actually come together in the right moment, and that the routine I did I was happy with, or despite a few mistakes, but I was really happy with it. And then Unfortunately, the final competitor didn't make it through her routine, but that meant pretty quickly that I knew that I'd become Olympic champion. And so, like, it's a weird moment. So I'm glad I was able to celebrate when I got my scores, because I didn't feel super comfortable celebrating
Yeah,
immediately when a
that makes
competitor and a friend of mine
yeah.
hadn't quite got through a routine. So, yeah, I was able to was yeah, when I saw my scores and then to stand on the podium just was amazing. And to be able to see my family afterwards, show them the medal, it was so fantastic. I was told before the close, like on closing ceremony day, Team GB had said that I was going to be a flag bearer for them, the
Mm-hmm.
female flag bearer. And like,
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. Like, it just, the whole Olympic experience was so amazing and so wonderful. And I still have to pinch myself. It feels like somebody else lived that. Like, it doesn't feel
wow.
like it was me. It's so strange. But yeah, the flag bearing was such an honor, and I felt like it was such a big moment for trampoline, because like trampolining at the Olympics is it's a small sport. People don't really know trampoline. Some people, they don't know trampolining is in the Olympics. It gets a lot of grief of like online about trampolining. I could do that, or this is a
Everything
sport.
else.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, it's a garden trampoline, and they get judged, and so it's not real. And so it's a
That's
difficult,
frustrating.
like, if yeah, it's frustrating to be in a sport that people obviously like don't always appreciate it being a sport, and for it to be welcomed to the Olympics, and for Team GB to
Yeah,
see that a trampolinist was kind of deserving of holding a flag for the whole team. I just couldn't believe it. For like, it's such a big moment for trampoline for in our country.
yeah,
And for myself, like, it was such, I felt like super honored and super proud, and just absolutely, like, I was so emotional when they told me.
I'm
I
sure.
just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And I
Oh,
had to keep it secret from my team as well. So like, I
oh
was having
wow.
lunch and I got a phone call, and they were like, "Oh, are you alone?" I was like, "Oh no, I'm like with my team." He's like, "Oh, can you take yourself away?" And I was like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And like, I took myself away, and he told me, and I was like crying my eyes out, and then I had to like
Well,
compose myself, go
yeah,
and sit back at dinner, and like finish
that's
my food,
great.
like, haha, like, like not saying anything, but looking completely different. But
Yeah,
luckily, they didn't ask, because the last thing they heard was, "Is everything okay?" So they're
yeah.
not going to pry. And yeah,
Mm,
so I was like
interesting.
very, yeah, I didn't know how to contain my like that energy and like shock. And I can't, it was such an amazing experience, the whole Olympics, from the opening ceremony to the closing. It was just, I couldn't have asked for any more.
That's
Wonderful. Yeah.
amazing. I mean, especially after everything you went through, so well deserved.
Thank you.
Do you have the gold medal with you right now by
I
chance?
do.
Yeah.
Let me go get it. One
Good
second. I'm
luck.
so
Yeah,
sorry. I have it
amazing.
here. You'll have
Oh,
to
wow.
let me know if you can see it, because I can't see myself on screen. I can't bear to look at myself on
Oh, no worries.
screen.
Oh,
Is this
wow.
okay? So that's
Amazing.
the Eiffel Tower part, and then
Mm.
there is the Eiffel Tower like here,
Oh, wow.
and
Beautiful.
the lady is Nike, the goddess of victory.
Mm. Wow.
And my mum pointed out that the fabric looks like the Eiffel Tower. I don't know if you can see. It's got
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like little
Oh, it
things, and
does.
it goes up.
Uh,
Yeah,
Like the, I don't know what those are called, but the
yeah, that iron, like the
architecture
metal
of
kind of
the,
crisscross
yeah, very
too.
cool. Wow.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to wear that, have that, and know that that's yours?
Again, it doesn't feel like it's someone else's, maybe.
Yeah.
But uh, yeah, like, I haven't had enough time to just kind of look at it. It's it is heavy. Like, even now when I feel it, I know it feels a lot heavier than I think it's going to be. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's more like it. I have to really take myself back to that moment to feel like it actually happened. So, and it's such a beautiful medal to own. I just feel, I guess, not like gobsmacked, but like have to pinch myself to really believe that it's happened. And it really hasn't sunk in. I have moments of it sinking in, and like, they just all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, I'm Olympic champion. Like, it's
Yeah,
it's like really random times, like at
sure.
grocery store or like whatever. And yeah, so it really, like, this is a nice obviously it's a very nice thing to own and remind
Yeah.
me of that time. But like I have a whole box of memories as well that I can go through,
Oh,
which is so cool. Um, I'm too much of a hoarder to throw out little things, but at the
yeah.
Olympics, I feel like it's okay.
No, I think it's definitely okay. I love that. And when you won that medal, it was your 3rd Olympics. You
Mhm,
were 33 years old, which I'm not sure in trampoline gymnastics, but I know in gymnastics, you usually peak very young.
mhm,
So, was age something that ever comes into your mind or like a blocker for you? And I think it's something a
mhm,
lot of women especially experience. So, it's really cool that you won that. I would say maybe obviously so young, but quote unquote
mhm,
later in like an
mhm.
athlete's maybe age.
Yeah, so that I tried to work it out because that the average age of the female competitor in this Olympics for Paris was 25, but in the final I was the oldest by like 9 years, so it's quite a big difference. But I don't feel it. I think that's the main thing. Like, I actually can't believe that I'm 34. I don't. I feel stronger, and despite the ankle issue, I had an ankle issue going into Rio, and actually I felt so much stronger and healthier going into those Olympics than I did in Rio, which at the time I felt was physically the strongest that I had and mentally strongest. So like my strength has only got better,
Mm.
my power, like in terms of like we do like physical testing and results, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I feel strong. um I have to manage a little bit differently. Like I really need to focus well on my recovery, and all of the recovery tools that I can, icing
Yeah.
and resting, and have to be careful with the load that I do on the trampoline and the volume, just manage it and be a bit more particular with that. But and I also have to do more in the gym,
Mm.
but to make sure that I can withstand what I'm doing on the trampoline. But I do feel stronger, and yeah, I don't feel my age. I feel stronger than I did when I was in my early 20s.
Amazing.
And do you know, like people do bring up the age thing, and they're really kind of surprised that I'm going to go for another Olympic cycle, or that I'm the age that I am and winning Olympic medals still. But I went to Cirque recently and watched
Yeah, I
people
saw.
train, and there's there's like I wasn't the oldest there, and these people are doing shows twice a day, 6 days a week, if you know, and they're so physically so strong in what they're doing
Mm.
and the elements that they're doing, acrobatics, and so and I was like, no one's saying, oh, they're too old to do the performing, and
Mm.
I it allowed me to just kind of rethink a few things. And although I might be like one of the oldest competitors in trampoline in the world for at that level, um, it's something that like I I don't know. I think if you look after your body and you train well, it's not a barrier. It's just the fact that I've loved it more, so that I've kept it on going. So a lot of people kind of
Yeah.
they either lose their love, or they don't feel like they can achieve more in it or get better. And for me, I love it, and I can see myself getting a bit better each day. Like I just want to. There's still things I want to achieve, like skills and stuff that I want to compete. Um, and I just want to see what my glass ceiling is and try and break through
Mm.
it. And yeah, so I love it enough to do that, and I've got the amazing support team around me that look after my body and and
Yeah,
help me
definitely.
with that, so I'm able
Yeah.
to keep going. And I read something that like Usain Bolt, kind of when he was retiring from sport, people were kind of like, he's so young, and he was like 30 something, and they're like, he's so young. So it's interesting, like the comparisons.
Mm.
And also we've got like Oksana as well, who's like what 49 in gymnastics, to go for another Olympic cycle. So, it's definitely possible, and age isn't that
Yeah.
much of a barrier as we think it was.
I love that. That's very cool.
Thank you.
Really awesome that you're going for another Olympic cycle, and really we'll be cheering for you and sending
Thank
you the best
you.
of luck. My last question to close interviews, always just like to ask, out of everything we talked about today, what is the one thing you would want listeners to take away from this conversation and apply to their own life when it comes to their mindset?
Oh, good question. I don't know if it's one thing, so hopefully this comes across as one thing, but the idea that sometimes it takes a little bit longer to achieve a goal, and to stick with it if it's something that you know that you're going to love when you come out the challenge on the other side, and to remind yourself of that during the challenging times. The reason why you are doing it and why you're trying to get through it is because you love to, when it's going well.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that's the way, because yeah, went through challenging times. It took me a long time to overcome things, and yeah, just because I knew that I was going to love it on the other side, and yeah, just to find that joy in what you're doing.
Yeah, I really love anchoring on the joy. Well, thank you so much for your time and the extra time. I could keep talking about this topic with you for hours, but I really appreciate the time that you've given. I think really amazing insights that can really inspire people both in sports and outside of sports. So thank you for the time and all of the inspiring work that
Thank you,
you do.
and thank you.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For more episodes, search for the MindXFrame podcast where you stream for podcasts, or find us at MindXFrame Podcast on Instagram. See you next time.